Hello, Activated Talks, Activators. Welcome back to Activated Talks 2024. This is the third season of Activated Talks, and I'm joined in studio today by Giovanni Plessis. He has become a co-host as well on the Activated Talks podcast, with discussions ranging from politics, global affairs, socio-economic struggles and developments in the country. Now, Giovanni Plessis.
Thank you, Mr. Nafuka, for introducing me. I'm so honored, guys, to be back for the second time. Third
time, actually.
Third time, hey. Hey, we need to keep track of that.
Absolutely.
So I'm quite happy to be back, and I'm quite happy to give my opinion on some of the matters that we'll be focusing on today.
Yeah, so we decided that we are going to give our viewers an overview of international affairs, things that are happening globally. This is a global world, and the world is interconnected.
Globalization,
absolutely. So whatever is happening outside of Namibia, it might affect Namibia one way or another. So we want to look at various events that have rolled out internationally, globally, recently in the recent months, some of which have been taking place for years now, including the Ukraine conflict, the Palestinian situation, which we now have the escalations between Gaza and Israel that are happening. And recently we have had the Africa-Italy summit
also,
which took place. And then we have some escalations happening between the United States and Iran.
Iran through the Houthi rebels also. And all that.
We also have the Houthi rebels who are trying to disrupt trade. And they mostly say that we are actually targeting ships that are headed for Israel, as they claim that most of these ships actually have weapons that are going to Israel, that Israel is using to allegedly bomb Palestinians inside of Gaza. Yeah, but to kickstart this discussion on what's happening internationally, I read something very funny that actually it had me on my, there's a pigeon in India that was detained by the police for 8 months. A pigeon, we're talking about a bird.
A pigeon, are you serious? Like, I saw the memes going around, but I couldn't believe it. I was like, it's funny. But it cannot be real.
It was breaking news.
I saw it yesterday.
Sky News reported it. BBC reported it. It's a bird, a pigeon. It was detained by police for inspections for 8 months.
But then the question comes: how did the police notice it's a spy? Because it's just a pigeon.
So after 8 months, they decided that this it's not actually a spy.
It's just a pigeon.
So apparently, it was actually found in India. It's the Indian police, Indian authorities that took it. When they discovered it, the Indian Animal Control, they saw that this specific bird has writings on it, but they are not actually clear writings. So they decided to take it in, and they've been examining it for 8 months. Wow. After 8 months, they concluded that this bird is actually innocent. We are gonna say it. So they were saying it's a Chinese spy. It was a possible Chinese spy. Yeah, but
just getting crazy at this point.
It's crazy because you see, during the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union, they used animals. They used pigeons.
Even there was cats. I remember the CIA had a story of trying to get cats in to send information around. I remember.
So you never know. As ridiculous as
it may sound,
you can actually have a pigeon that is spying for the Chinese government. But we actually know now that it's actually not happening. Yeah, but let's move to more serious stuff.
More serious topics.
We recently had the Italy-Africa summit. This is the summit where we have African leaders from both 53 countries going to sit with the Prime Minister of Italy. I find it funny. 54 heads of states going to sit with one person, one Prime Minister of Italy, of a European country. And you ask the question, where is the African Union?
The African Union, my friend, is a joke. I am a big Pan-Africanist. I've been a Pan-African activist since grade 8, since I actually started learning about Pan-Africanism. And the AU, it's a joke. I'll be honest, we don't want to admit it as Africans, but it's a joke. No one takes us seriously as the African Union. That is why all heads of states of Africa had to go meet one prime minister, and she couldn't come to Africa and meet us on African grounds, seeing as they want to resolve the problems of immigration and trafficking and so on. So I think I think it's for her to come to Africa. She was supposed to come to Africa, sit down with our leaders
With
and
the AU.
with the AU, and have this discussion. But even another example, I don't always like going back to it, but it was the same thing is where NATO sent African leaders back when they went to go visit Gaddafi, because NATO didn't even take Africa seriously enough, or the AU seriously enough.
I think one of the things that really limit the AU, African Union, is the fact that they are funded mostly by the European Union for most of their developments.
But
Whether it's development infrastructural development projects, whether it's education, whether it's diplomatic relations, for example, strengthening the effectiveness of parliaments in Africa. I think you cannot really do much in a situation where the person who is actually
but then it comes
you
back to this. It's as simple as this, as also starting to create a budget from every member has to start contributing a certain amount of fee of their GDP also, because this is an Africa situation. At the end of the day, we all, as the African Union, the end of the day struggle of the African Union is to become one united country at the end of the day. That is why we created the African Union. It's just like the same like the European Union at the end of the day.
I think the African Union is losing it's losing the meaningfulness
of the African Union, why it was started.
Why it was actually created.
There was a reason
by
why
the founders.
Kwame Nkrumah and them fought. There was a reason they started this.
But one of the things they discussed at the Africa-Italy summit is mainly to the European Union to collaborate with African countries to curb illegal migration. They call it irregular migration, maybe to sound less rude, but it's illegal migration, which I also don't like the term illegal, so let me just use irregular migration as well.
But they cannot complain now after destabilizing that whole region in Northern Africa.
Absolutely.
They destabilized that region.
Absolutely.
They came in with their NATO. They took out what is the guy's name, Gaddafi, that was keeping the region in control up there also. So they can actually complain about that because
Absolutely.
They took him out. NATO took him out.
I think the European Union has so much to really take
responsibility
for.
There's a lot of responsibility, especially towards the African continent. They need to start taking responsibility for, and they need to be held accountable.
Yeah, so because no one really wants to leave their country to migrate
to another
a country that is on another continent.
Where I'm possibly even going to have to be encounter racism also. Because
absolutely. Even all other possible stuff.
Because let us be honest, as Africans, we do experience a lot of racism once we leave the African continent.
Yeah, true. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
A lot of discrimination as well. So they also discussed that the European Union wants to detach from Russia. Especially its dependence on Russia for energy. So they want to make sure that they want to actually divert their energy focus on Africa to actually import energy from Africa. They want to create a pipeline, and this is what the Prime Minister actually emphasized on. They are going to actually get in a lot of funding into Africa to actually get energy production in Africa going. So I'm not sure whether they are going to focus on clean energy or they are still targeting the still vast amounts of carbon-based energy which Africa is running on and fossil fuels that Africa is still mining for energy production.
So for me also, I personally would like to say that due to the Paris Agreement, the Paris conference that happened, Africa was also a signatory. A lot of African countries were signatory towards the Paris Agreement, and
including Namibia.
Including Namibia also. So it is our responsibility to go green. It is our responsibility to go green. But at the moment, it is very hard for the world to go green. I'll be honest. But if just coming back to also for Trump, even there's a high possibility of Donald Trump winning the elections. Donald Trump wants to go more with fossil fuels and so on.
He doesn't believe in climate change.
Doesn't believe in climate change.
Look, these people. They believe in climate change, and is that's ridiculous, right? I'm like,
I'm okay.
We can literally see climate change
happening,
especially here in Namibia. For some of us who are from the north, and most of the people in the north depend on subsistence agriculture for a living to produce food, and we can see the unreliable rainfall that is happening now and unreliable rain patterns. So climate change is real, and we are witnessing it. So in a case where Trump,
okay, but coming back to that, as I was saying now. So for me, it doesn't actually. I won't say it doesn't matter But as long as the jobs are created in Africa, whether they're exporting fossil fuels or green energy, as long as you guys
there's
it's jobs in Africa
African industries
by
and industrialization.
Africans, and then we do know that we do not have the facilities here in Africa. We do not have I won't say the mental capability, but then the knowledge. I would say we do not have
the training
the
and the
training,
education.
yes, and the education. But if we can start, if they can give our people the training and also the industries, then they build up the industries in Africa, I'll be more than happy to agree with the climate, not climate change, to the exchange of them decoupling from Russia and investing in more in Africa.
Yeah, a particular party in Italy, which I think is the opposition party, they actually trashed the Africa-EU summit, Africa-Italy summit, saying that no, this is just another neo-colonial stand that Italy is, undertaking. They want to exploit Africa's resources, like Europe has been doing. And what's your take on that?
I would say it's a 50-50. I would
50-50.
My honest opinion, it's a 50-50. That is why I said the knowledge should be given to Africans how to do it. The job should be done here in Africa. We should sell it at a market price, not an African price, because there's a thing going around of an African price where things are much more cheaper than they're actually on the market. We sell coal at a much cheaper price than it's actually on the market. We sell uranium at a much cheaper price than it's on the market.
I've seen most of the resources in the DRC.
Thank you for bringing up the DRC.
Those were ridiculous prices. That these, metals and minerals were selling
being sold for.
That is,
it's known as the African price. Yeah, so that's why I'm saying it's a 50-50. So if it's sold at the market price, and they also bring in the facilities, and they also bring in the training for Africans, and a certain amount of the energy we produce is also given to Africa. So remember, a lot of Africa doesn't have power yet.
Yeah.
Like, I won't say it doesn't have power, but it's not fully powered. Like, you go to some cities and so on, not cities, some towns and so on, and there's still not power. There's like power is limited. So if some of the power can stay here at home, and the energy can stay here at home, then I'll say go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I think let's move on to the Palestine and Gaza. Israel.
Sure, that's a little touchy one, but we can go there.
Yeah. South Africa recently took Israel to the International Criminal Court of Justice, and their case was reviewed, and the court passed a judgment in which they, of course, urged Israel to minimize civilian casualties, but they did not give Israel an order for an immediate ceasefire, which was what South Africa was aiming for. You know, the South African Minister of International Relations, which she's a woman that inspires me a lot. You know, she's a leader.
I see you post there a lot.
Yeah, she's a leader. I'm like, wow, this
yeah.
woman, I've actually been watching her a lot of times before this whole Israel conflict situation, and you know, she's fit for that position. Well done to the South African International Ministry of International Affairs and the Justice Society of South Africa. So what is your take on the ruling? Because one of the judges, who was the only African judge, a black woman,
I saw her.
She voted against everything that South Africa actually brought forth. She voted against. She's the only one who voted against all of
my disappointment in that lady,
including South Africa's proposal for a ceasefire. She voted against it, and she's an African.
She's the only African judge. So coming back to this, on that ruling of the International Court, I always tell people it's a touchy subject. I don't want to go into the subject because some people on social media get very touchy on the subject.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I would say that ruling gave the world, and South Africa knew what they were doing by taking this to the International Court. This gave the world a clear view of what the International Court stands for and what the UN stands for.
Yeah.
These are Western institutions. People always tell me that you are Pan-Africanist, so you see the wrong in every Western institution, but it's not me seeing the wrong in every Western institution. It is just, these are Western institutions that have been brought up to keep us suppressed. Now, I would come out and say personally, I wasn't even going to do it, but I'm going to say it anyways. I see Israel as an apartheid state, and the US is backing this apartheid state. The US has been vetoing every single how do you call it, that comes to them, every proposal that comes to them, Security Council proposal that comes to them, and saying first they must start a ceasefire because it's genocide happening. I don't want to go into the topic into detail, but it's a very touchy subject.
I mean, the US has its interests, its aims. Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, a real democracy at least. And given that it's the only democracy, I think the US wants to maintain its relations with it and to somehow also try to bring the dream of democracy to make it a reality in the Middle East. I think that's what the US is doing. But more than that, the Middle East is a very strategic region globally, given its oil wealth, and the United States depends on oil so much.
But the United States doing this and standing behind Israel, this is causing more countries in the Middle East to run to BRICS. Remember now, BRICS is for emerging economies. People are getting tired of the US bullying them around. Like most people don't even actually understand like the amount of oil that is in the Middle East actually. So the US depends a lot on that oil. If these countries start moving away from the US and because some of these countries are US allies, but they're moving away. Saudi Arabia, it's a US ally, it's a very big US ally, but it's moving to BRICS also. Now that Saudi Arabia has moved into BRICS, I believe BRICS has 44%, owns 44% of the world's oil now.
Yeah.
And
I'm not sure if Saudi Arabia finalized the transition to join BRICS.
They haven't finalized it, but the South African, one of the South Africans, government officials came out and said, like, no, it's finalized, but Saudi Arabia itself hasn't come out and announced.
They've not come out to announce it. They did the signing.
Yeah, they did the signing. So it's Saudi Arabia, it's Egypt, it's the UAE, and I'm missing Iran. Those are the four.
The BRICS expansion is making the United States very nervous because an expansion of BRICS means that people will divert away from using the US dollar for trade, which is one thing that really gives the US dollar demand and strengthens it. So if you have big countries, wealthy countries like Saudi Arabia joining BRICS, that makes the United States very, very nervous. And given the proximity between the United States and Saudi Arabia, how does this change their relationship?
But a lot of people don't actually know the history behind Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, it's just the name is Arabia. Saudi is the family name, the the royal family name. Yeah. So Saudi Arabia, so it means like the royal family is in charge, like until perpetuity. So what that
one family
is in charge. So the name, people don't understand. The name is Arabia. Saudi, it's you see always like you hear Saudi from the royal family.
So Saudi is the name of the family.
It's the royal family. Oh. So what happened is when they moved off when the US moved off from the from the gold standard, the US made a deal with Saudi Arabia and told Saudi Arabia, we would help you, the royal family, stay in charge if you guys supply oil indefinitely to the United States. You need to keep on supplying oil to the United States indefinitely. We will put down any insurrections that come up for democracy in your country. So if people don't want the royal family anymore, the US will personally make sure they put it down. The US will personally make sure any incursions in the royal family. So that's
unlimited security
from the United States itself. Sure. Yeah,
that's a big achievement. Look at Israel. Israel has so much protection and security from the United States and most NATO allies. And that is something to really brag about, because having such amount of protection, you can literally do anything that you want.
You even see like Israel till today hasn't come out and said officially how many nuclear bombs. Even Russia has come out, the US has come out and said how many nuclear bombs they have.
Talking about conflicts, we still have the Ukraine-Russia conflict. It has not died out, but the media is not giving it much
attention
coverage.
Now, because
we understand these other conflicts
happening currently worldwide.
Yeah. The European Union has agreed to 54 billion euros of military aid. Is it military aid or just aid?
It's just aid,
to Ukraine. 54 billion.
And remember, their economies are suffering right now.
Look at that.
Their economies are suffering. Their people are suffering back home with high unemployment rates, high inflation rates, and they're doing this.
But what does this mean for Putin?
Guys, let us be honest. With this one topic I wanted to talk to you about is the amount of elections that are coming up now globally. So I can even go ahead and call it right now. I'll be the first to call it even right now on Activated Talks that Putin is going to win the next Russian elections. So the
I saw he started campaigning.
He started campaigning already, and the thing is, I saw the interview of Hungary's I'm not sure it's the prime minister or president. I think it's the prime minister that came out and said there's something about Russians that's different from the other Europeans. Russians have this thing of they've been invaded, they have been mutated through the generations. So Russians always look for a strong leader, and currently there's no other strong leader than Vladimir Putin. So Vladimir Putin is going to be in charge for the next term again. So I'll call it right now and say Vladimir Putin is going to be in charge for the next term. People are saying no, insurrection is going to happen, and what? None of that is going to happen. Let's be quite honest and simple about that. So, but coming back also to the Ukraine war, I want to ask you something. Zelensky and his top general are having small quarrels amongst themselves. Rumors have come out, BBC and so on have started to publish sides of Zelensky and his general having problems. But the general is becoming so popular among Western leaders and also amongst the general Ukrainian population. So do you think it is wise for Zelensky to let him go now, or for Zelensky to keep him on?
I think I think it would be wise for Zelensky to let him go now. But one thing we need to keep in mind is that Zelensky made it clear that there won't be any elections anytime soon until this crisis and conflict is over. So he has to deal with that issue. It's a very threatening issue. If the West is in good terms with this leader, this commander that is that is coming up, remember, the West needs a leader in Ukraine, that is conforming to Western standards, which is democracy, joining NATO, joining the European Union, so depending on what the ideological stance of that particular military commander is, and the West is okay with him, you never know what the West can do.
Yeah.
The West is not predictable.
Yeah.
So, but if Zelensky, I also don't know what capabilities or military experience this. Maybe is a very vital resource for Zelensky
he actually
during this crisis.
Currently is, but the problem with the way the dispute came between the two of them is Zelensky is pushing a narrative of there can be a counteroffensive, a quick counteroffensive like it happened in the spring.
And the guy is...
And the guy is
like,
just telling him, honestly, no, it's a stalemate. And Zelensky doesn't want to hear it's a stalemate. And the Western media doesn't want to hear it's a stalemate.
Always listen to your experts.
But I also have one more question for you, Martin. Circling back to the Palestine conflict. I just want to, a lot of people don't actually know the historical context behind it. I just want you to tell people about the 1917 Balfour Declaration, which actually caused all of this.
Absolutely. So most people don't actually know that Israel only became a state in 1948. And the Jewish people have went through a lot of bad stuff in history. I understand that, and I sympathize with the Jewish people. They went through a lot. So what happened in 1948 is that Balfour, what was Balfour's position again?
He had a government position, but I cannot remember what position he had. But he went to the Zionists and asked for money.
So Balfour in 1948, prior to 1948, he approached the Zionists. I think the Zionist organization that time in Britain, and he went to the Rothschild. Yeah,
can you just quickly explain to some of them what is the Zionist organization? Because some of them don't know actually what is the Zionist organization. Some of our viewers may not know.
Yeah, so there's I'm not sure currently if the Zionist organization, because there was an international Zionist organization prior to Israel becoming a state, so I'm not sure if it still exists. But that organization, it existed for the welfare of Jewish people, right? It's promoting the welfare and existence of Jewish people, assuring them a state, a sovereign state, and assuring them sovereignty as a people and security, economically and socially. So it's literally an organization, given all the atrocities that Jewish people went through in history, it was only fair that they had to come together in solidarity and in unity with one another. Just the same like you heard with people in Namibia, they had to come together in the spirit of nationalism against apartheid, So coming back to the Balfour Declaration, Balfour approached the Zionist leadership, including the Rothschild, which is a very wealthy Jewish family today that at the time had a lot of influence in the banking sector in the United Kingdom, in Europe as well, the Rothschild. He approached them, he said, look, we are going to promise you a Jewish state. And we don't know where we are going to have this state, but we are looking at the land of Palestine. We are looking at the land of Palestine as a very favorable destination for
But
you.
remember also, there was also Kenya. There was also the possibility of coming to the African continent of Kenya.
Yeah, they wanted to put the Jewish people on Kenya, on Kenyan ground. But I think it's only the only viable option they had was to actually
Put them in Palestine. Yeah.
go for the Palestinian. So what happened is that after after the Balfour Declaration, the Britain had control of the Palestinian land, right? They had them as a Class C mandate, if I'm not mistaken, where they were preparing them for independence and self-governance. Yeah, that was before 1948. So imagine Britain literally rushed to make sure that they had control of this piece of territory, and they had control of Palestine. And what happened is that they started facilitating the mass movement of Jewish people from Europe into Palestine.
Yeah.
What happens is that these Jewish people were wealthy people. They were wealthy, and on top of that, before the mobilization of Jewish people from Europe back into Palestinian land, they created a sovereign wealth fund, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was a sovereign wealth fund.
They were raising funds actually to help this mobilization of Jewish people back into Palestine. So what happened is that they came here and they started buying land, a lot of land. So later you see that these people have bought so much land that we have now communities of Jewish people. Remember, before this, there were still Jewish people living in Palestine.
Yeah.
But when these wealthy Jewish people came, they started having large communities, and they started developing their own political, situation happening.
Yeah.
So the number of Jewish people started increasing. And what we saw is that Palestinian people saw this as a threat. They started doing uprisings against Jewish people. So we had a lot of conflict before 1948. Actually, during the First World War, we've had a lot of conflict between Jewish people and Palestinian people. Palestinian people seeing the Jewish people who are settling on this land and buying large sums of land as a threat, to their existence. So what happened is that the Balfour Declaration, it became true. The Jewish people started moving back to Palestinian land, which, according to history, they were once there, and we have seen how this particular piece of land, Palestine, went through a lot in history. We have seen a lot of empires were taking control over this land. The Romans were there.
Napoleon has came. Everyone has been there. Yeah.
Yeah, Napoleon was there. So eventually they came back, and the United Nations decided to agree that they are gonna make Palestine a state. So they made Palestine
Israel.
Israel a state.
Yes,
Sorry,
Israel a state.
Thank you for that correction. They're gonna make Israel a state, and Israel as a state got a lot of backing. So given that Israel became a state, they got the right to use military force. And when after 1948, when Israel became a state, the Arab states launched a military attack
against.
I think Egypt was one of them. Jordan was one of them. They launched an attack against Israel. So what happened is that Israel won this war, and they emerged stronger with more land and more territory. So the history is huge, and I advise everyone watching this to actually read up on the history of Israel-Palestine, to just check it up and inform themselves. It's very interesting to keep oneself informed about this
kind of
event.
matters, yes.
Yeah, but let's move on to more pressing issues. Transparency International, the organization that releases information on corruption in the world, they recently released the Corruption Index. So it's an index in which they release a list of countries where they give it a ranking from 100 to 0. The higher the ranking a country has out of 100, the less corrupt it is. The lower the ranking a country has out of 100, the more corrupt it is.
Yeah.
So Namibia is not doing bad, but it's still a very alarming position.
49
with
or
49? 49 out of 100.
Yeah.
So that puts us at the borders. Yeah, so
between very bad,
very bad and very good. So that is it's one of the stuff that I think our viewers need to actually know and keep.
Corruption, it's not something easy to stamp out. It's like weed. Like it just keeps on growing back and keeps on growing back. But there are measures to combat corruption, and those measures, I'm sure the Attorney General knows the steps, but I don't know what's going on there. I want to go into someone else's house and decide how they should clean their house.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, I would say for Namibia has a long way to go in mitigating corruption, because corruption is everywhere, man. Like, I've had instances where officers even try to bribe me. I'll not mention names here or anything, where people actually came and wanted certain things from me, and I had to look the other way also. So I would say even the law enforcement is into corruption. I won't mention names.
Okay. Is it going again?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, even our law enforcement is busy in corruption and so on. So, but have you experienced any corruption yourself?
Yeah, look, corruption it's a reality. It's from a social stance, from the family unit, to the community at large, to the national level. Corruption happens, but I want to mention that Namibia, I think, is at a good position because if you look at our population, it's quite a young population, and it's becoming more politically
Awaken?
politically conscious. So that means that because in instances where you have a country that has a population that is not really educated on the political systems, institutions, and processes, these are people who will never question what is happening.
What's happening around them,
And corruption can roam freely in that country. But if you look at Namibia, the young people are becoming more politically conscious and aware and informed, which is one of the things that I think is keeping our statistics. Also, given our free media, our independent media in Namibia.
Yeah, we have like one of the best medias in Africa, actually. Even in the world, even we can go as far as saying
the
that.
freest press in Africa. So that is one of the things that is really keeping our corruption on check. But I think the public, the general public, need to do more and contribute more to Namibia becoming a less and less corrupt country. I think it's very important, especially with questioning audits, questioning procurement procedures, questioning whatever is happening to our taxpayers' money, whatever the government is using
doing
it for.
with our money, because a lot of people don't actually understand that they actually are taxpayers. Most of Namibians are taxpayers. The fact that you go buy a loaf of bread in Spa makes you a taxpayer because you paid your 15% VAT.
I think they take it very lightly.
They take it very lightly that they are taxpayers, yes.
And they have the right to know what their tax money is doing.
I just quickly have one more class question for you, Martin. We touched on the amount of elections happening around the world. Now, I just want to get your opinion of what you think are the stakes of this coming elections, of seeing as so many countries are going to the polls.
There's a lot of elections happening worldwide. I think these elections, the coming elections in Namibia is quite interesting. It's quite interesting. You have a lot of political parties, opposition political parties taking place in these elections. But personally, what I feel is that the opposition parties are not ready to take on SWAPO.
SWAPO yet?
They are not ready to take on SWAPO. They are not really putting in the work that they need to put in because SWAPO is a force to be reckoned
with. We've had this discussion,
we've had these discussions. They are not ready. They don't grow themselves as opposition parties to be able
quiet
to
and
I don't know if opposition parties really want to win the presidential elections or they just want to make sure that they mobilize enough numbers to stay in parliament
and be official opposition.
Because
it seems that's the only position they fight for is the official opposition party.
And have their members in parliament get money from parliament and keep their party running. I don't know if that's what their aim is now. They actually want to literally get the ruling party off.
And internationally, what do you think on the international front?
Yeah, we have elections in many. I think South Africa also has.
South Africa also has. I think South Africa's one. It's more mind-boggling than Namibia's one.
Exactly.
Seeing as there's still a story of ANC needing to be liquidated and so on. So
ANC is being liquidated.
There's a story of ANC. ANC can be liquidated.
I didn't really follow up on that
because that's actually you guys should actually read up on the story of ANC.
I didn't follow up on that, but I see the DA is coming in hot.
It's coming in hot. Julius is also coming in very hot also. The American elections, they seem very interesting also.
Yeah, Trump is having the lead. I think these court cases and all these indictments that they took him through is actually putting him on a better
scale. So I'll even say if Trump does, I'll go as far as saying if Trump doesn't win this election, that election was rigged, guys. I'm not a Trump propagandist, but I would go as far as saying that because the way my bro is pulling the polls now, I have to say.
No, Trump is good. Give Trump his cards, give Trump his flowers. Trump is good. Whatever he's doing it good. But on that note, Giovanni Plessis, thank you for joining me in this discussion. We are going to have more of these discussions. Absolutely. We just for your information, The viewers of Activated Talks, Giovanni Plessis and I, Martin Nafuka, will be hosting more segments on political issues, social, economic issues, and global affairs. And this was our first global affairs segment. And tune in for more global affairs segments where we uncover events happening on a global stage and how these events affect other world events and how they affect us as Namibians. Thank you for tuning in, and let's see what you think about this in the comment section. And thank you.
Peace, guys.